nothing collapses louder than certainty. Marble, ash, and silence preserve impossible testimonies, untouched by ordinary belief. Every unearthed fragment unsettles accepted origins, inviting breathtaking doubt without permission. 15 astonishing discoveries linger beyond expectation, patiently dismantling familiar narratives until wonder becomes the only surviving language remaining. A sea of green stretches to every horizon. From above, the rainforest appears unbroken, its dense canopy concealing every trace of what lies below. Sunlight filters through towering ceiba trees, touching only fragments of weathered limestone before disappearing into layers of vines and shadow. To a traveler on the forest floor, the landscape feels timeless. Yet, beneath roots that have grown undisturbed for centuries rests an immense world shaped by countless human hands. The Maya did not simply build isolated cities scattered through the jungle. They transformed entire landscapes. Beneath the vegetation lie pyramids, ceremonial plazas, reservoirs, agricultural terraces, defensive walls, and elevated stone roads known as Saqqara, linking communities across remarkable distances. What once seemed like disconnected ruins are now understood to have formed vast urban networks supporting millions of people. This picture became dramatically clearer with the arrival of LiDAR technology. By sending laser pulses through the forest canopy, researchers revealed thousands of previously unknown structures hidden beneath the trees. Entire neighborhoods emerged where only wilderness had been visible. Massive platforms, fortifications, irrigation systems, and carefully planned avenues suggested a civilization whose scale had long been underestimated. Instead of scattered kingdoms surviving in isolation, the evidence pointed toward an interconnected landscape of engineering, trade, and political complexity. Many of these discoveries confirmed ideas archaeologists had suspected for decades. The Maya possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, architecture, and water management. Their calendar systems reflected precise observations of celestial cycles, while their cities adapted ingeniously to environments that often experienced seasonal droughts. Every temple, plaza, and carved monument tells a story of rulers, rituals, alliances, and generations of careful planning. Yet, not every question has found an answer. Why were so many monumental centers eventually abandoned? Environmental pressures, prolonged droughts, warfare, shifting trade routes, and political instability all appear to have played important roles. Rather than a single dramatic collapse, many researchers describe a gradual transformation that unfolded differently across the Maya world. Some cities declined, while others continued to flourish. The story resists simple explanations. Other mysteries remain more elusive. Certain architectural alignments seem remarkably precise, inviting continued study of how astronomical observations shaped sacred spaces. Underground caves and flooded sinkholes, known as cenotes, held profound spiritual significance, serving as places of ceremony, pilgrimage, and offering. Some contain artifacts resting exactly where they were placed more than 1,000 years ago, preserved in silent darkness. Beyond the established evidence, alternative interpretations continue to circulate. Some suggest that hidden chambers may still lie undiscovered beneath major pyramids. Others wonder whether countless settlements remain concealed beneath untouched rainforest, waiting for future surveys to reveal them. More speculative voices have proposed forgotten technologies or knowledge lost with time, though such ideas remain unsupported by conclusive evidence. Even so, their persistence reflects how much of the ancient Maya landscape has yet to be fully explored. Every season brings fresh discoveries. Another ridge examined, another mound cleared, another inscription translated. Each new finding expands the map while reminding us how incomplete it still is. The rainforest remains both guardian and storyteller, revealing its secrets slowly, almost reluctantly. As long as vast stretches of jungle remain unexplored, one quiet possibility endures. Perhaps the greatest chapter of the Maya civilization is still hidden beneath the leaves, waiting for the moment when silence finally gives way to stone. If the rainforest taught us that entire civilizations can remain concealed beneath a living canopy, our next destination offers a different kind of silence. Here, there are no towering trees to hide forgotten cities, only rolling hills, dry grass, and a landscape that appears almost empty. Yet appearances, once again, prove remarkably deceptive. On a windswept ridge in southeastern Turkey stands Göbekli Tepe. At first glance, it resembles little more than a gentle rise overlooking the surrounding plains. Only when the earth is carefully peeled away do enormous limestone pillars emerge, arranged in carefully planned circles that have rested beneath the soil for thousands of years. Their surfaces are carved with foxes, serpents, boars, vultures, cranes, and other creatures, each rendered with striking confidence. Every stone seems to carry a message, though its full meaning remains just beyond reach. Radiocarbon dating places the earliest phases of Göbekli Tepe around 9,600 BC, making it one of the oldest known monumental sites ever discovered. This date alone transformed long-held assumptions about early human societies. For decades, many researchers believed that large ceremonial monuments appeared only after agriculture had produced permanent settlements. Göbekli Tepe suggested a far more complex story. Monumental architecture may have emerged while communities were still largely dependent on hunting and gathering. The engineering itself raises difficult questions. Some pillars stand more than 5 meters tall and weigh many tons. They were quarried from nearby limestone, shaped with remarkable precision using stone tools, then transported and erected without metal equipment or wheeled vehicles. Such achievements imply careful organization, skilled labor, and shared purpose. But what inspired groups of people to undertake such extraordinary work? The prevailing interpretation sees Göbekli Tepe as a ceremonial or ritual center. Rather than serving as a city, it may have drawn scattered communities together for seasonal gatherings, reinforcing social bonds through shared beliefs and collective construction. The carved animals could represent powerful symbols, protective figures, or spiritual concepts now lost to time. The distinctive T-shaped pillars are widely thought to represent stylized human forms, though exactly whom, or what, they depict remains uncertain. Even more intriguing is the growing realization that Göbekli Tepe may represent only a small portion of a much larger landscape. Geophysical surveys have identified numerous buried anomalies surrounding the excavated circles. Nearby sites, including Karahan Tepe and several related settlements across the region, reveal similar monumental architecture, suggesting that Göbekli Tepe belonged to an extensive network rather than standing alone. Each new excavation expands the picture, hinting at a sophisticated cultural tradition spread across the hills long before written records. Then comes one of the site's greatest mysteries. At various points in its history, many of the monumental enclosures were deliberately filled with earth, stone fragments, and debris. This does not resemble destruction caused by warfare or natural disaster. Instead, the burial appears intentional, almost ceremonial. Why would generations invest immense effort constructing these remarkable spaces, only to carefully conceal them beneath the ground? Mainstream explanations suggest changing ritual practices, cultural transitions, or symbolic acts marking the end of sacred places. Others wonder whether deeper meanings remain hidden within the sequence of construction and burial. More speculative theories propose forgotten systems of knowledge, sophisticated astronomical observations, or traditions whose significance disappeared long before recorded history. None of these ideas has been conclusively demonstrated, yet the site's extraordinary age continues to invite fresh interpretations. Only a small percentage of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. Most of the hill still waits beneath layers of soil, preserving structures that no modern eyes have seen. Every new trench has the potential to reshape our understanding of the site's purpose, its builders, and the world they inhabited. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not what has already been uncovered, but what still rests quietly below, untouched, waiting for the next careful brushstroke to reveal another fragment of humanity's forgotten beginnings. From the ancient hills of Göbekli Tepe, where buried stone circles continue to challenge our understanding of humanity's earliest monuments, our journey moves across continents to a place that conceals its secrets in a very different way. Here, the silence is not buried beneath soil alone. It is woven into an endless ocean of trees, where every layer of green seems determined to erase the memory of those who came before. The Amazon rainforest stretches beyond the horizon, its rivers winding like living veins through one of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth. From above, the forest appears untouched, a vast wilderness shaped only by nature. Thick vegetation hides the ground almost completely, allowing only scattered glimpses of the landscape below. For centuries, this overwhelming canopy encouraged a simple assumption: that large, organized civilizations could never have flourished here. Recent discoveries have begun to tell a different story. Using airborne LiDAR technology, researchers have revealed enormous networks of ancient settlements concealed beneath the forest. Invisible from the ground, geometric earthworks, ceremonial platforms, defensive walls, and carefully planned roads have emerged from digital maps with remarkable clarity. Entire communities, once believed impossible in such an environment, suddenly became visible as parts of sophisticated urban landscapes connected across surprising distances. One of the most striking discoveries came from the Upano Valley in present-day Ecuador. There, scientists identified thousands of earthen platforms linked by an extensive system of straight roads and intersections. The settlements appear to have supported large populations for centuries, suggesting careful planning, organized labor, and a deep understanding of the surrounding environment. Similar discoveries across other regions of the Amazon point toward a pattern rather than isolated exceptions. The people who built these settlements did not simply survive within the rainforest. They reshaped it. Evidence of managed forests, artificial ponds, canals, raised agricultural fields, and the rich, fertile soil known as terra preta demonstrates an impressive ability to engineer landscapes without exhausting them. In many places, the forest itself may preserve the legacy of ancient cultivation, with the distribution of certain tree species reflecting decisions made by people hundreds or even thousands of years ago. Yet countless questions remain unanswered. How many cities still lie hidden beneath the canopy? The rainforest covers millions of square kilometers, while only a small fraction has been surveyed using modern remote sensing technology. Every new scan seems to uncover additional structures, suggesting that known settlements may represent only a glimpse of a much larger network. The purpose of some enormous geometric earthworks also remains uncertain. Circular enclosures, vast squares, and long embankments appear throughout parts of the Amazon basin. Some researchers interpret them as ceremonial gathering places. Others suggest defensive structures or territorial markers. It is entirely possible that they served several purposes across different cultures and different centuries. Their true significance may never be captured by a single explanation. Beyond the archaeological evidence, more speculative ideas continue to circulate. Some wonder whether early European explorers briefly encountered thriving Amazonian societies whose populations later declined dramatically following introduced diseases. Others imagine that still undiscovered ceremonial centers remain hidden in regions rarely visited by modern expeditions. A few propose that the rainforest conceals monumental complexes equal in scale to those found elsewhere in the ancient world. At present, such possibilities remain unverified, yet each new discovery demonstrates how easily long-held assumptions can change. Perhaps the greatest lesson offered by the Amazon is one of humility. What appears empty from above may conceal generations of human ingenuity beneath a tapestry of roots and leaves. Every season of exploration reveals another fragment of a forgotten landscape, inviting an unsettling thought. If entire cities can disappear beneath a living forest, how many chapters of humanity's story are still waiting in the quiet shadows, unseen until the trees finally choose to give them back? If the Amazon reminds us that entire cities can vanish beneath living forests, the next discovery tells a different story. Here, the past was not hidden by towering trees or distant mountains, but by layers of drifting sand resting quietly beside one of the world's most familiar ancient landscapes. For centuries, countless footsteps passed nearby, unaware that an extraordinary city remained only a short distance below. The western bank of the Nile, near the ancient city of Luxor, is a landscape shaped by memory. Colossal temples rise against the desert sky, while royal tombs disappear into rugged hills beyond. Every grain of sand seems connected to a civilization that has fascinated humanity for thousands of years. Yet, even in a place explored by generations of archaeologists, remarkable discoveries continue to emerge from beneath the surface. In 2020, excavations revealed an exceptionally well-preserved settlement dating to the reign of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, one of the most powerful rulers of ancient Egypt. Soon known as the Lost Golden City of Aten, the site offered an unusually complete glimpse into everyday life during the height of Egypt's prosperity. Unlike monumental temples or royal tombs, this was a living city, a place where artisans worked, families prepared meals, officials managed supplies, and ordinary routines unfolded beneath the desert sun. As excavation expanded, carefully constructed mud brick walls appeared almost exactly as they had stood more than 3,000 years earlier. Narrow streets wound between workshops, storage rooms, kitchens, and living quarters. Pottery remained stacked where it had last been used. Bread ovens, tools, jewelry molds, scarabs, woven materials, and sealed jars still occupied their original locations, creating the remarkable impression that daily life had paused rather than ended. Many of the discoveries carried the cartouches of Amenhotep III, confirming the city's importance during one of Egypt's wealthiest periods. Evidence suggests that skilled craftsmen produced luxury goods, decorative objects, and ceremonial items destined for royal use. Administrative buildings hint at careful organization, while industrial areas reveal a thriving center of production supporting the wider kingdom. Yet, the city also raises intriguing questions. Its history overlaps with one of ancient Egypt's most dramatic political and religious transformations. Amenhotep III was succeeded by his son, Amenhotep IV, later known as Akhenaten, whose sweeping religious reforms elevated the worship of the sun disk Aten above traditional beliefs. He established a new royal capital farther north, leaving historians to ask what became of settlements connected to the previous administration. Did the city gradually decline as political attention shifted elsewhere? Was it partially abandoned before later generations returned? Or did changing religious priorities reshape its purpose in ways that remain difficult to trace? Archaeological evidence continues to be studied, and while many answers are supported by inscriptions and material remains, the complete sequence of events is still being assembled. Some features remain especially puzzling. Rooms sealed with little sign of disturbance, artifacts left exactly where they were last handled, and unusual burials discovered within the settlement encourage careful investigation. Most researchers interpret these finds through the practical realities of urban life, changing occupations, or later reuse of the site. Others wonder whether unexplored districts could preserve clues to events that written records never fully described. More speculative ideas have naturally followed. Some suggest that additional royal compounds or ceremonial complexes remain buried beyond the excavated areas. Others imagine hidden archives containing administrative records capable of illuminating one of Egypt's most fascinating historical transitions. Such possibilities remain unconfirmed, yet every excavation season reveals how much still lies beneath the desert. The Golden City of Aten reminds us that history is not remembered only through pyramids and temples. Sometimes, its most revealing stories are preserved in workshops, kitchens, and quiet streets where ordinary lives unfolded. As the sand continues to surrender new walls, forgotten rooms, and silent objects untouched for millennia, one question lingers with quiet persistence. How much of this remarkable city is still sleeping beneath the desert, waiting for the next careful brush to uncover another forgotten moment in Egypt's ancient world? From the quiet streets of the Golden City of Aten, where ordinary lives seemed frozen beneath layers of desert sand, our journey moves north to a place where the silence reaches much deeper. Here, the secrets are not preserved inside abandoned homes, but within an immense labyrinth carved beneath the earth itself. Every step across the plateau conceals another doorway into a world that has remained hidden for thousands of years. Saqqara stretches across the edge of Egypt's western desert, where the fertile Nile Valley gradually gives way to endless sand. Dominating the horizon is the step pyramid of Djoser, the world's oldest large-scale stone pyramid, rising above a landscape that served as a royal and sacred burial ground for more than 3 millennia. Countless tombs, temples, shafts, and underground chambers surround it, forming one of the richest archaeological sites ever discovered. Yet, despite centuries of exploration, Saqqara continues to reveal entirely new secrets. The desert here is deceptive. What appears to be open ground often conceals deep vertical shafts leading into elaborate burial complexes below. In recent years, archaeologists have uncovered dozens of sealed wooden coffins, brilliantly painted despite the passage of more than 2,000 years. Many rested exactly where they had been placed, untouched since antiquity. Nearby lay statues, funerary masks, papyrus fragments, ritual objects, and carefully preserved mummies, each adding another chapter to Egypt's remarkably long story. Some shafts descend more than 30 meters into the bedrock. At their base, narrow passageways branch into hidden chambers where families buried generations of relatives. Priests prepared sacred rituals, and craftsmen decorated walls with symbols intended to guide the dead into eternity. Even today, each newly opened chamber seems to preserve the atmosphere of a world deliberately sealed away from time. Among the most remarkable discoveries are tombs belonging not only to royalty, but also to officials, artisans, priests, physicians, and military commanders. Their inscriptions offer intimate glimpses into lives rarely described in monumental temples. Titles, prayers, family relationships, and scenes of everyday work transform distant history into something unexpectedly human. Every painted wall speaks quietly of hopes that stretched beyond death itself. Yet, beneath these discoveries lies an even greater mystery. Saqqara has been excavated for generations, yet new burial shafts continue to appear in places once believed thoroughly explored. Ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, and modern surveying techniques suggest that vast sections of the necropolis remain hidden beneath untouched sand. Some researchers believe only a small portion of the underground complex has been revealed. If that is true, countless tombs may still rest below, their entrances concealed by centuries of shifting desert winds. Why were certain chambers left undisturbed while others attracted ancient tomb robbers? Why do some burial shafts contain extraordinary collections of artifacts while neighboring passages appear almost empty? In many cases, practical explanations involving changing burial customs, economic conditions, or later reuse provide convincing answers. Yet, other discoveries continue to resist simple interpretation, inviting further investigation rather than certainty. As often happens with places of such antiquity, more speculative ideas have also emerged. Some wonder whether undiscovered royal archives remain hidden beneath the plateau, preserving records that could illuminate poorly understood periods of Egyptian history. Others imagine interconnected passageways extending far beyond currently mapped chambers, linking forgotten temples or burial complexes still waiting beneath the sand. These possibilities remain unverified, but the steady rhythm of new discoveries reminds us how much remains unexplored. Saqqara is more than a cemetery. It is an evolving archive carved into stone, where every excavation opens another doorway into lives separated from our own by thousands of years. The deeper researchers descend, the more the landscape seems to expand beneath them. And perhaps that is the site's greatest mystery of all. If so much has already emerged from beneath the desert, what silent chambers still lie untouched below, patiently guarding stories no living person has ever read? If Saqqara reminds us that entire worlds can exist beneath a seemingly empty desert, the next discovery carries that idea even further. This time, the hidden world was not built as a place for the dead, but as a place for the living. Far below the streets of a modern city, carved into solid bedrock, lies a forgotten underground settlement whose story is only now beginning to emerge. The entrance is almost unremarkable. A narrow opening descends into cool darkness, where daylight quickly fades and the sounds of the surface disappear. Stone passageways twist through the earth, leading to chambers, storage rooms, wells, and narrow corridors worn smooth by countless footsteps. The deeper one travels, the more difficult it becomes to imagine how such an enormous place remained hidden for so long. Beneath the modern city of Matiate in southeastern Turkey, archaeologists have uncovered what is believed to be the ancient underground settlement known as Matiate. The name appears in ancient Assyrian records dating back nearly 3,000 years, where Matiate is described as an important regional center. While the exact relationship between the written references and the underground complex continues to be studied, the discovery has opened an entirely new chapter in the history of the region. Excavations, which began during restoration work in recent years, have revealed an astonishing network extending beneath the city. So far, researchers have identified living quarters, places of worship, water cisterns, storage areas, ventilation shafts, workshops, and long connecting tunnels. Archaeologists believe only a small portion of the underground complex has been explored, with much of it still buried or inaccessible beneath modern buildings. The engineering is remarkable. Ventilation channels allowed fresh air to circulate through enclosed spaces. Carefully designed water systems supported extended habitation below ground. Rooms appear to have served different purposes, suggesting that the settlement functioned as more than a temporary refuge. Evidence indicates that people may have occupied portions of the complex during different historical periods, adapting and expanding it over many centuries. Why would entire communities choose to live beneath the surface? The most widely accepted explanation points to security. Throughout the region's long history, repeated conflicts, invasions, and political upheavals may have encouraged local populations to create protected spaces where families could survive periods of danger. Underground settlements offered stable temperatures, concealed entrances, and defensible passageways, making them practical sanctuaries during uncertain times. Yet, the scale of Matiate continues to invite deeper questions. Current estimates suggest that only a fraction of the complex has been uncovered. Ground surveys indicate additional chambers extending far beyond the excavated sections. Each newly opened corridor reveals another sequence of rooms, suggesting that the underground city may be significantly larger than originally imagined. Every discovery forces archaeologists to redraw their maps, expanding the known boundaries of a place that refuses to reveal itself all at once. The site's multiple phases of occupation also add layers of complexity. Different architectural styles, construction techniques, and religious spaces indicate that successive generations reshaped the underground landscape according to their own needs. Rather than belonging to a single moment in history, Matiate appears to represent centuries of continuous adaptation beneath the earth. As with many extraordinary discoveries, more speculative interpretations have followed. Some wonder whether undiscovered ceremonial chambers or administrative centers remain hidden behind collapsed walls. Others suggest that extensive tunnel systems may once have connected distant sections of the settlement in ways not yet understood. A few have proposed that similar underground cities remain concealed beneath neighboring communities, forming part of a much larger network across the region. At present, these ideas remain unverified, but ongoing excavations continue to reveal surprises that few anticipated only a few years ago. Standing within the silent corridors of Matiate, it becomes difficult to separate what is known from what still waits in darkness. Every carved passage seems to promise another doorway just beyond the reach of today's excavations. And if so much of this underground city remains untouched beneath the modern world, perhaps the greatest discovery is not what has already been uncovered, but what still lies hidden beyond the next wall, patiently waiting for history to find it once again. From the underground corridors of Matiate, where entire communities carved their lives into stone beneath the surface, we emerge once again into open air. Yet, the next mystery reminds us that history does not always hide in caves or beneath ancient cities. Sometimes it rests quietly beneath an ordinary landscape, unnoticed for centuries, waiting beneath fields where generations have walked without suspecting what lies below. At first glance, the farmland appears entirely unremarkable. Gentle hills roll across the countryside, interrupted only by patches of cultivated soil and narrow country roads. The wind moves through tall grass much as it has for centuries, carrying little hint that the ground itself preserves the outline of one of the Viking Age's most remarkable discoveries. Nothing rises above the surface. No towering monument announces its presence. Only modern technology revealed that beneath this peaceful field rested the shadow of a forgotten ship. In southeastern Norway, near the village of Gjellestad, researchers conducting ground-penetrating radar surveys identified the unmistakable shape of a large Viking ship buried beneath the earth. Unlike traditional excavation, the radar allowed scientists to see beneath the surface without disturbing the fragile remains. The discovery immediately attracted worldwide attention. Viking ship burials are exceptionally rare, and each one offers an extraordinary glimpse into the beliefs, power, and craftsmanship of a society that continues to fascinate historians. Although much of the wooden vessel had deteriorated over the centuries, its imprint remained clearly visible in the soil. Measuring approximately 20 meters in length, the ship had been placed within a carefully constructed burial mound that had gradually disappeared through centuries of farming. Around it, researchers detected traces of additional burial mounds, longhouses, roads, and settlement features, suggesting that the ship formed part of a much larger ceremonial landscape rather than an isolated monument. For the Vikings, ships were far more than practical vessels. They represented status, identity, exploration, and the journey beyond death. The burial of an individual inside a ship required enormous resources and careful planning, making such ceremonies likely reserved for people of exceptional importance. Was the person laid to rest here a king, a queen, a military leader, or a powerful local ruler? The available evidence has yet to provide a definitive answer. Subsequent excavations revealed that microorganisms and changing soil conditions had severely damaged much of the original timber. Archaeologists worked quickly to document every surviving fragment before further deterioration could occur. Even in its fragile state, however, the ship has offered valuable insights into Viking burial traditions, construction techniques, and the organization of elite communities during the late Iron Age. Yet, the ship itself may represent only part of the story. The surrounding landscape continues to raise compelling questions. Radar surveys identified additional anomalies extending beyond the immediate burial site, hinting at structures still concealed beneath neighboring fields. Some appear to be ancient buildings, while others resemble smaller burial mounds or enclosed ceremonial spaces. Every new survey expands the known archaeological landscape, suggesting that the visible discoveries may represent only a fraction of what still lies underground. Researchers also continue to investigate why this location held such significance. Its placement appears deliberate, overlooking routes that would once have connected inland settlements with nearby waterways. Was the ship positioned to honor a ruler whose influence reached across the region? Did the surrounding monuments serve generations of the same family, gradually transforming the area into a sacred center remembered long after individual names were forgotten? More speculative interpretations have naturally emerged alongside the archaeological evidence. Some propose that additional Viking ships remain buried beneath surrounding farmland, awaiting detection through future surveys. Others wonder whether entire ceremonial complexes, hidden beneath centuries of agricultural activity, could reshape our understanding of how Viking elites organized political and religious life. A few have even suggested that similar discoveries across Scandinavia may reveal interconnected landscapes far larger than previously imagined. For now, these ideas remain possibilities rather than established conclusions, but each new investigation continues to broaden the picture. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Gjellestad ship is not simply its age, but the quiet way it endured. For centuries, seasons passed above it. Crops were planted and harvested. If a Viking ship could remain hidden beneath an ordinary field for more than 1,000 years, perhaps the greatest archaeological surprises are not always carved in stone or cast in metal. Sometimes, the most fragile materials survive against every expectation. Wood, so easily consumed by fire, water, insects, and time, would seem destined to disappear long before history could remember it. Yet, in one remarkable corner of Africa, ancient timber endured long enough to challenge what we thought we knew about our distant ancestors. The Kalambo River flows quietly through a rugged landscape, marking part of the border between present-day Zambia and Tanzania. Dense vegetation surrounds its banks, while the nearby Kalambo Falls sends a constant veil of mist into the air. The ground remains unusually wet throughout the year, creating conditions unlike almost anywhere else. Beneath layers of waterlogged sediment, where oxygen is almost entirely absent, time appears to move differently. Materials that would normally decay within decades can survive for hundreds of thousands of years. It was within this remarkable environment that researchers uncovered two carefully shaped logs lying one across the other, joined by a deliberately carved notch. At first glance, the discovery might seem deceptively simple. They are not towering monuments or richly decorated artifacts. There are no inscriptions, no precious metals, and no elaborate carvings. Yet, these modest pieces of timber may represent one of the most extraordinary achievements ever uncovered from humanity's deep past. Advanced dating techniques indicate that the structure is approximately 476,000 years old. That astonishing age places it long before the appearance of Homo sapiens as we know them today. Instead, the builders were likely another human species, perhaps Homo heidelbergensis, or a closely related population living during the Middle Pleistocene. Whoever they were, they possessed skills that few had imagined possible for people living nearly 500,000 years ago. The notch itself is the key to the mystery. Rather than being the product of natural erosion, microscopic analysis revealed deliberate shaping using stone tools. One log had been carefully cut so another could fit securely into it, creating what appears to be a stable joint. This suggests intentional design rather than simple use of fallen timber. Someone envisioned how separate pieces of wood could become a stronger structure when combined with planning and precision. Why build such a construction? The prevailing interpretation is practical. Researchers suggest the joined logs may have formed part of a raised platform, walkway, or foundation, allowing people to move across permanently wet ground or establish a more stable living surface near the river. If correct, this would represent an extraordinary leap in human behavior. Rather than simply adapting to the landscape as they found it, these early people actively modified their environment to better suit their needs. The implications extend far beyond woodworking. Creating such a structure would have required planning, cooperation, tool-making, and perhaps even the transmission of knowledge across generations. It hints at communities capable of solving engineering problems through observation and shared experience. Such abilities suggest levels of cognitive sophistication that continue to reshape discussions about early human evolution. Yet, the discovery also leaves profound questions unanswered. Wood rarely survives for such immense periods of time. Could similar structures once have existed across prehistoric landscapes, only to vanish without leaving any trace? Stone tools endure for hundreds of thousands of years, but timber houses, bridges, platforms, and shelters usually disappear completely. It is entirely possible that archaeology has preserved only a tiny fraction of ancient wooden technology simply because nature erased almost everything else. The Colombo discovery therefore challenges more than a single assumption. It invites reconsideration of entire chapters of early human history. Perhaps our ancestors were shaping forests, constructing simple architecture, and altering their surroundings on a scale that current evidence has barely begun to reveal. As with every remarkable discovery, more speculative ideas have emerged alongside mainstream interpretations. Some suggest the structure may represent part of a larger settlement still buried beneath waterlogged sediments. Others wonder whether similar engineering traditions developed independently across different regions, hundreds of thousands of years earlier than previously believed. A few have even proposed that prehistoric wooden architecture may once have been widespread, leaving almost no archaeological footprint because nearly every example eventually decayed. These possibilities remain unconfirmed, yet they illustrate how one unexpected discovery can transform long-standing assumptions. Researchers continue to investigate the surrounding deposits, searching for additional wooden artifacts that might clarify the structure's original purpose. Every preserved fragment has the potential to reveal another detail about the people who shaped these logs with remarkable intention so long ago. The site itself remains exceptionally fragile, requiring careful conservation to protect evidence that survived only because of an extraordinary combination of geology, climate, and chance. Standing beside the rushing waters of the Colombo River, it is difficult not to reflect on the unlikely survival of something so delicate. Across nearly 500,000 years, civilizations rose and disappeared. Continents changed, climates shifted, and countless generations came and went. Still, two carefully joined logs endured beneath silent layers of mud, carrying a message from people whose names, languages, and faces have been lost forever. Perhaps that quiet structure reminds us that history is not measured only by monuments that tower above the landscape. Sometimes its oldest chapters survive in the smallest traces, inviting one enduring question. If a wooden structure nearly 500,000 years old could remain hidden until our own time, what other fragile achievements of humanity's earliest ancestors are still waiting beneath ancient soil, preserved against every imaginable odds? As the echoes of the last mystery begin to fade, another hidden chapter of the ancient world quietly emerges. Not beneath shifting desert sands or frozen mountain peaks, but beneath one of the thickest jungles on Earth. Here, where towering ceiba trees stretch toward the sky and dense layers of vines conceal the landscape below, the silence seems almost deliberate. For centuries, this green expanse appeared untouched, as though nature had erased every trace of those who once called it home. Yet beneath that living canopy lay something extraordinary. Entire cities, vast networks of roads, monumental pyramids, reservoirs, terraces, fortifications, and ceremonial complexes, all hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right technology to reveal them. The rainforests of northern Guatemala, southern Mexico, Belize, and parts of Honduras have long been recognized as the heartland of the ancient Maya civilization. Travelers who reach the great ruins of Tikal, Calakmul, Palenque, and dozens of other famous sites often imagine them as isolated cities surrounded by endless wilderness. The jungle itself reinforced this impression. Thick vegetation swallowed abandoned temples, wrapped tree roots around carved stone staircases, and buried entire plazas beneath centuries of fallen leaves and soil. To early explorers, these magnificent ruins seemed like lonely monuments left behind by a vanished civilization. But appearances, as archaeology often reminds us, can be remarkably deceptive. For generations, archaeologists painstakingly mapped Maya settlements on foot. Progress was slow. Every structure had to be cleared by hand, every mound measured individually, every pathway traced through nearly impenetrable vegetation. The work demanded enormous patience, and even after decades of exploration, scholars suspected that they were seeing only a fraction of the ancient landscape. Then, in the early 21st century, everything changed. A technology known as LiDAR, short for light detection and ranging, began transforming archaeological research. Mounted on aircraft, LiDAR sends hundreds of thousands of laser pulses toward the ground every second. While most of these pulses bounce off leaves and branches, enough reach the forest floor to create an astonishingly detailed three-dimensional map of the terrain beneath the vegetation. What emerged from those scans stunned even experienced archaeologists. Instead of scattered cities separated by wilderness, researchers saw an immense interconnected landscape shaped almost entirely by human hands. Hills that had seemed natural revealed themselves to be pyramids. Gentle ridges became elevated highways stretching across wetlands. Subtle rises in the terrain turned into defensive walls, palace complexes, agricultural terraces, and carefully engineered reservoirs. The jungle had not preserved isolated cities. It had concealed an entire civilization. One of the largest LiDAR surveys ever conducted covered more than 2,000 square kilometers within Guatemala's Maya Biosphere Reserve. Researchers identified over 60,000 previously undocumented structures. Houses, temples, pyramids, causeways, canals, defensive fortifications, marketplaces, and water management systems appeared almost overnight, not because they had suddenly been built, but because they had finally become visible. The implications were profound. If so many structures had remained invisible despite centuries of exploration, how many more still waited beneath forests that had never been scanned? The discoveries challenged long-held assumptions about Maya civilization. For decades, many scholars believed Maya cities were relatively small ceremonial centers surrounded by sparsely populated farming communities. The new evidence suggested something entirely different. Large urban regions appeared connected by broad elevated roads known as Saqqara, creating networks that linked cities across remarkable distances. Some of these roads stretched for miles through swamps and forests, requiring enormous engineering effort. Their straightness remains striking even today. Rather than following the easiest terrain, many continue with remarkable precision across challenging landscapes, suggesting careful planning and centralized organization. Constructing such infrastructure demanded labor, resources, and administrative coordination on an immense scale. Who organized these projects? How were thousands of workers supplied? What political systems managed such complexity without metal tools, wheeled transport, or large domesticated animals? Archaeologists continue searching for answers. The Maya had already earned admiration for extraordinary achievements in mathematics, astronomy, architecture, and writing. Their sophisticated calendar systems tracked celestial movements with astonishing precision. Their cities featured towering pyramids aligned with astronomical events, elaborate palace complexes, observatories, and some of the most intricate hieroglyphic inscriptions in the ancient Americas. Yet, the LiDAR discoveries hinted that their accomplishments may have extended even further. Water management, for example, appears increasingly sophisticated. Seasonal rainfall dominated much of the Maya lowlands. During wet months, enormous quantities of water had to be collected. During dry seasons, every drop became precious. Across the newly mapped regions, researchers identified reservoirs, canals, filtration systems, and engineered wetlands designed to maximize water storage and agricultural productivity. Some reservoirs may have incorporated natural filtration using sand and mineral-rich materials, producing cleaner drinking water centuries before similar systems appeared elsewhere. Agriculture itself revealed unexpected complexity. The rainforest soil is often surprisingly poor for large-scale farming. Maintaining dense populations required careful environmental management. LiDAR exposed extensive terraced hillsides, drainage canals, raised agricultural fields, and modified landscapes covering enormous areas. Rather than adapting passively to nature, the Maya actively reshaped it. Entire ecosystems became engineered environments supporting populations that may have numbered in the millions. Population estimates remain debated. Earlier calculations suggested relatively modest numbers. The new evidence has encouraged significantly higher estimates, with some researchers proposing that between 7 and 11 million people may have lived throughout the Maya lowlands during their peak. If accurate, these figures place Maya civilization among the largest and most densely populated societies of its era. Yet, despite this remarkable scale, many questions remain unanswered. Perhaps the greatest mystery concerns what has not yet been found. LiDAR excels at revealing shapes beneath vegetation, but it cannot identify every detail. Excavation remains essential. A mound detected from the air may be a temple, a palace, a defensive wall, or something entirely unexpected. Each newly scanned landscape generates thousands of potential excavation sites. Archaeologists simply cannot investigate them all. As a result, the overwhelming majority of these newly discovered structures remain untouched. Some have not been visited since the civilization that built them disappeared over 1,000 years ago. Walking through these forests today, researchers sometimes navigate directly to locations identified by LiDAR. Where digital maps show geometric shapes, they often find stone platforms barely visible beneath roots and vines. Massive pyramids rise only a few meters above surrounding vegetation, almost completely disguised by centuries of forest growth. Without advanced mapping technology, many would still appear to be ordinary hills. Nature has proven remarkably effective at hiding history. This raises another fascinating question. If modern technology overlooked these cities until recently, how many similar landscapes might still remain undiscovered elsewhere on Earth? The Maya discoveries also revived interest in long-standing legends that had circulated for generations among local communities. Stories spoke of abandoned cities swallowed by forests, places where ancient spirits guarded forgotten temples, where carved monuments stood untouched beneath giant trees, and where pathways disappeared into the wilderness before reaching destinations no one remembered. For years, such stories occupied an uncertain space between folklore and archaeology. Today, some of them appear less mythical than once believed. When LiDAR reveals entire ceremonial centers precisely where oral traditions suggested forgotten settlements once existed, it reminds us that legends sometimes preserve fragments of historical memory across countless generations. Not every legend proves accurate, but neither should every legend be dismissed too quickly. The rediscovered cities have also prompted renewed examination of the Maya collapse, one of archaeology's most enduring mysteries. During the 9th century AD, many major cities across the southern lowlands experienced dramatic decline. Monument construction slowed. Royal inscriptions became less frequent. Populations decreased. Some cities were gradually abandoned altogether. The reasons remain debated. Climate studies suggest repeated periods of severe drought may have placed extraordinary pressure on agriculture and water supplies. Evidence of warfare appears increasingly common at several sites. Defensive walls, once thought relatively rare, have emerged more frequently through LiDAR surveys. Political fragmentation, resource depletion, environmental stress, shifting trade networks, social unrest, and population pressures may all have contributed. Rather than a single, catastrophic event, many researchers now envision a prolonged period of interconnected crises affecting different regions in different ways. Yet, despite decades of investigation, no universal explanation fully accounts for the remarkable transformation. The civilization did not simply vanish. Millions of Maya people survived, and their descendants continue living throughout Central America today, preserving languages, traditions, and cultural identities that reach back thousands of years. What changed was the political landscape. The great cities fell silent. Why some recovered while others never did remains an active area of research. Beyond mainstream archaeology, the sheer scale of the hidden cities has naturally attracted more speculative interpretations. Some independent researchers argue that conventional timelines underestimate the true age of certain Maya sites. They point to weathering patterns, buried construction phases, or unexplained architectural features as possible indications that some foundations may predate accepted chronologies. Most archaeologists remain cautious, emphasizing that current dating methods, including radiocarbon analysis, ceramic studies, and inscriptions, consistently place the major construction phases within well-established historical periods. Even so, deeper excavation sometimes reveals earlier buildings beneath later pyramids, suggesting that many cities evolved over centuries through repeated rebuilding. Every new excavation has the potential to extend the known history of a site. Others have wondered whether the extraordinary precision seen in Maya astronomy reflects knowledge acquired from forgotten sources. The Maya tracked planetary cycles with remarkable accuracy. They predicted eclipses, observed the movements of Venus, and aligned major buildings with celestial events. To mainstream historians, these achievements represent generations of careful observation conducted by skilled astronomer priests. Alternative theories occasionally suggest contact with lost civilizations or unknown cultures possessing advanced astronomical knowledge. No convincing evidence currently supports such claims. Yet, the sophistication of Maya science continues to inspire admiration, precisely because it developed independently. Sometimes, reality itself feels extraordinary enough. There are also questions surrounding the immense labor required to construct cities on such a scale. Without iron tools, horses, oxen, or wheeled transport for heavy loads, countless limestone blocks were quarried, transported, shaped, and assembled into towering pyramids rising more than 60 meters high. The engineering is well understood in principle. Human labor, organized over generations, can accomplish astonishing feats. But standing before these monuments still invites reflection. How many lives were devoted to building them? How many forgotten workers left no names behind, even as their creations endured for centuries? LiDAR has revealed another intriguing detail. Many settlements previously thought independent now appear integrated into continuous urban landscapes. Residential neighborhoods stretch far beyond ceremonial centers. Agricultural zones blend into suburban districts. Causeways connect communities in ways few anticipated. The distinction between city and countryside becomes increasingly blurred. Instead of isolated kingdoms separated by wilderness, the Maya world may have resembled an enormous interconnected mosaic of urban regions linked through trade, diplomacy, religion, and political alliances. This realization fundamentally changes how we imagine ancient life beneath the rainforest canopy. What once seemed empty forest may actually have echoed with conversations, markets, ceremonies, music, and daily activity across hundreds of interconnected communities. The silence we experience today is not timeless. It arrived only after centuries of transformation. Even now, discoveries continue. Each new LiDAR survey expands the known map. Each excavation uncovers fresh surprises. Hidden pyramids emerge from beneath vegetation. Unknown inscriptions appear beneath collapsed staircases. Ceremonial platforms reveal traces of rituals not yet fully understood. Entire districts materialize where maps once showed only forest. And with every revelation comes another reminder of how incomplete our understanding still is. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this story is not that thousands of structures remained hidden for so long. It is that they were never truly lost. They stood patiently beneath the jungle canopy, year after year, century after century, while trees grew above them and roots slowly embraced their stones. Storms passed overhead. Empires rose and disappeared across distant continents. Generations came and went without realizing that one of humanity's greatest ancient landscapes remained only a few meters beneath the forest floor, concealed not by magic, but by nature's extraordinary ability to reclaim what humanity leaves behind. Today, aircraft carrying invisible laser pulses have begun peeling back that green curtain, revealing a civilization far larger, more connected, and more sophisticated than anyone imagined only a few decades ago. Yet, the deeper researchers look, the more the mystery seems to expand. For every hidden pyramid now mapped, how many still lie beyond the limits of current surveys? For every ancient road traced through the rainforest, how many more vanish into unexplored wilderness? And if an entire world could remain concealed beneath a living canopy for over 1,000 years, what other chapters of human history might still be waiting, silent, unseen, and remarkably close beneath our feet? If the dense jungles of the Maya remind us that entire civilizations can disappear beneath living forests, the next mystery suggests that some of history's greatest discoveries may still be hiding beneath the very ground we believe we already understand. In central China, beneath layers of carefully packed earth and silent fields that have overlooked centuries of change, archaeologists continue to uncover new pieces of an underground world that has challenged our understanding of the ancient past ever since it was first revealed. And despite decades of excavation, one question grows stronger with every new discovery. Have we uncovered only a fraction of what was originally built? The landscape surrounding the ancient city of Xi'an appears peaceful at first glance. Rolling farmland stretches toward distant hills, interrupted by villages, orchards, and quiet roads. Rising gently above the plain stands an enormous earthen mound, almost understated in its appearance. Unlike towering pyramids or dramatic stone temples, it resembles nothing more than a natural hill. Yet, beneath that mound lies the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unify China around 221 BC. His reign transformed the political landscape, standardized writing, currency, measurements, and infrastructure, and laid foundations that would influence Chinese civilization for thousands of years. But it was not the emperor's life alone that would capture the world's imagination. It was what he left beneath the earth. In 1974, a group of local farmers digging a well made an unexpected discovery. Instead of water, their tools struck fragments of terracotta. As archaeologists began investigating, they uncovered one of the greatest archaeological finds of the 20th century. Rows upon rows of life-sized clay warriors emerged from beneath the soil. Each appeared ready for battle. Standing in disciplined formations, equipped with carefully sculpted armor, weapons, horses, and chariots, these soldiers formed an enormous underground army unlike anything ever discovered before. Today, thousands of these figures have been excavated, yet researchers believe they represent only part of a far larger complex. The Terracotta Army has become one of the most recognizable archaeological sites on Earth, but perhaps its greatest mystery is not what has already been uncovered. It is what remains hidden. Walking through the vast excavation halls, visitors are often struck by the incredible individuality of the soldiers. No two faces appear exactly alike. Some wear thin mustaches. Others display fuller beards, youthful expressions, stern gazes, or subtle smiles. Hairstyles differ. Armor varies according to military rank. Officers stand taller than ordinary infantry. Archers, cavalrymen, generals, musicians, officials, and stable workers each occupy distinct roles within the immense underground world. For decades, scholars debated whether these faces represented actual individuals or carefully assembled combinations of artistic features designed to create the illusion of uniqueness. Either way, the craftsmanship remains extraordinary. Each warrior once carried real bronze weapons. Many were painted in brilliant colors: reds, blues, greens, purples, and black pigments that transformed the army into a remarkably lifelike force. Unfortunately, exposure to air caused most of those colors to disappear within hours after excavation. Modern conservation techniques have improved dramatically, but the rapid fading of ancient pigments became one of archaeology's most sobering lessons. Sometimes, revealing the past risks destroying part of it. This dilemma shapes almost every decision surrounding the site today. Because, despite decades of research, archaeologists have intentionally left large portions of the complex untouched. The emperor's central tomb itself has never been opened. This surprises many people. Why leave one of history's greatest tombs unexplored? The answer lies partly in respect, partly in technology, and partly in caution. Ancient historical records, particularly those written by the historian Sima Qian, roughly a century after the emperor's death, describe an astonishing underground palace. According to these accounts, craftsmen constructed rivers and seas using flowing mercury. The ceiling represented the heavens with stars and constellations. Mechanical traps were reportedly designed to protect the tomb from intruders. Vast quantities of treasures accompanied the emperor into the afterlife. For centuries, many dismissed these descriptions as exaggerations. Then, scientists began studying the soil surrounding the burial mound. Unexpectedly, they detected unusually high concentrations of mercury. While the exact source remains uncertain, the findings are intriguing enough that researchers continue investigating the possibility that at least part of the ancient account may reflect historical reality. Opening the tomb prematurely could permanently damage whatever remains inside. Modern archaeology increasingly recognizes that sometimes the best excavation is no excavation at all, at least until technology advances further. Meanwhile, discoveries continue elsewhere across the sprawling necropolis. The burial complex surrounding Qin Shi Huang extends across roughly 56 square kilometers. The famous warriors occupy only one portion of this immense funerary landscape. Surrounding them are dozens of satellite pits containing an astonishing variety of figures and objects. Bronze birds stand beside carefully constructed waterways. Acrobats appear frozen in mid-performance. Court officials wait silently in administrative formations. Musicians remain poised as though eternal ceremonies are moments away from beginning. Stone armor, bronze chariots, stables, animal skeletons, workshops, and ceremonial structures all contribute to an underground empire built to accompany the emperor into eternity. And still, archaeologists continue identifying entirely new sections. Ground-penetrating radar, remote sensing technologies, and careful excavation have revealed previously unknown pits extending beyond the areas originally explored. Some contain military units arranged differently from those already known. Others preserve unusual artifacts whose purposes remain uncertain. Each discovery suggests that the original design was even more ambitious than researchers first imagined. Rather than a single underground army, the complex increasingly resembles a complete miniature version of the emperor's empire. One particularly intriguing aspect concerns the organization of the military formations themselves. Different excavation pits contain distinct tactical arrangements. Pit 1, the largest, features thousands of infantry supported by chariots. Pit 2 includes cavalry, kneeling archers, standing archers, and specialized combat units. Pit 3 appears to function as a command headquarters, housing senior officers and ceremonial elements. Yet, additional excavations continue revealing structures whose exact military functions remain debated. Were there once even more command centers, reserve units, supply depots, training formations? The original plan may have extended far beyond what survives today. Excavations over recent decades have uncovered additional warriors displaying details never before documented. Some armor styles differ subtly from previously known examples. Certain hairstyles appear unique. Decorative elements reveal regional influences within the emperor's newly unified empire. Every new figure contributes another piece to an increasingly complex historical puzzle. Even small fragments matter. A broken hand may reveal weapon techniques. A damaged boot can provide clues about military equipment. Tiny traces of pigment help reconstruct original appearance. What seems insignificant often transforms broader historical understanding. The workshops that produced these remarkable figures present another enduring mystery. Creating thousands of life-sized statues required extraordinary organization. Researchers believe craftsmen used standardized production methods, manufacturing individual body parts separately before assembling them into complete figures. Heads, arms, torsos, and legs were produced using molds and then refined by hand, allowing each warrior to acquire distinctive facial features despite efficient mass production. This combination of standardization and individuality feels surprisingly modern. It reflects not only artistic achievement, but industrial-scale planning. Who coordinated such an enormous project? Historical records suggest hundreds of thousands of laborers worked on the emperor's mausoleum. Some estimates reach 700,000 workers, although exact numbers remain uncertain. Regardless of the precise figure, the project represented one of the largest construction efforts of the ancient world. Entire communities of artisans, engineers, metalworkers, sculptors, administrators, and laborers dedicated years, perhaps decades, to building an empire beneath the ground. Yet, the names of most remain unknown. Their creations achieved immortality. They themselves largely disappeared from history. Recent discoveries have also expanded understanding of the weapons carried by the warriors. Bronze swords, spearheads, arrowheads, crossbow triggers, and polearms reveal remarkable metallurgical skill. Some weapons exhibit chromium residues once thought to represent an unexpectedly advanced anti-corrosion treatment. Later research suggested the explanation may instead relate to nearby lacquer coatings rather than intentional chromium plating. Even so, many blades remain astonishingly well preserved after more than 2,000 years underground. The sophistication of Qin-era metallurgy continues impressing specialists today. Beyond the established archaeological evidence, the hidden sections have naturally encouraged more speculative interpretations. Some researchers outside the academic mainstream propose that the known excavation areas represent only ceremonial entrances into a vastly larger underground network extending beneath the surrounding landscape. According to these ideas, undiscovered chambers might preserve archives, mechanical devices, additional armies, or engineering achievements beyond anything yet revealed. At present, no archaeological evidence confirms such expansive underground cities. Still, the burial complex is undeniably enormous, and large portions remain unexplored. The scale alone leaves room for continued surprises. Others focus on the historical accounts describing elaborate mechanical defenses. Sima Qian wrote that crossbows were reportedly designed to fire automatically at intruders entering the tomb. Ancient Chinese engineers certainly possessed impressive mechanical knowledge. Trigger mechanisms, sophisticated bronze castings, and complex construction techniques are well documented. Whether such defensive devices remain functional after more than 2 millennia is another matter entirely. Most archaeologists consider surviving operational traps highly unlikely. Nevertheless, the possibility reflects the extraordinary lengths reportedly taken to protect the emperor's final resting place. Mercury itself has inspired additional speculation. The elevated concentrations measured around the burial mound have prompted theories ranging from symbolic rivers to elaborate hydraulic systems. Some fringe writers have even suggested advanced technologies unknown to conventional history. Mainstream researchers remain far more cautious. Mercury held symbolic importance in ancient Chinese beliefs concerning immortality and the cosmos. Historical texts describe its ceremonial use. Natural geological processes may also contribute to observed concentrations. At present, no single explanation fully resolves every question. Sometimes the mystery lies not in choosing one theory, but in recognizing how much remains uncertain. Another fascinating development involves microscopic analysis of pigments, tools, and manufacturing marks. High-resolution imaging allows researchers to identify fingerprints left in wet clay over 2,000 years ago. Tool impressions reveal sequences of production. Chemical studies trace mineral sources used for pigments and ceramics. Every advancement in scientific technology extracts new information from artifacts excavated decades earlier. In a sense, discoveries continue even without uncovering new ground. The existing warriors still have stories to tell. There is also growing evidence that not every planned section of the mausoleum complex was completed. Construction appears to have continued until the emperor's death in 210 BC. political upheaval followed soon afterward. Some unfinished features suggest work may have stopped abruptly. Were additional armies intended but never completed? Did craftsmen abandon certain projects during the ensuing instability? Or were some hidden sections deliberately sealed before completion for reasons now lost to history? The answers remain buried beneath layers of earth. Perhaps one of the most intriguing aspects of the Terracotta Army is how much it reshaped our understanding of ancient imperial ambition. The warriors themselves are extraordinary, yet they represent only one component of a much larger vision. The emperor sought not merely a tomb, but an entire functioning empire prepared for eternity. Officials governed, soldiers defended, entertainers performed, animals filled stables, waterways flowed. Every essential element of earthly rule appears to have been recreated underground. It reflects a worldview in which death did not end authority. It simply transferred it elsewhere. The hidden sections reinforce that impression. Every newly discovered chamber suggests greater complexity. Every unexplored anomaly hints that the original design exceeded even our current imagination. Despite decades of excavation, researchers estimate that only a relatively small percentage of the total mausoleum complex has been scientifically investigated. Most remains undisturbed beneath farmland and protective earth. This restraint reflects an important shift within archaeology itself. Earlier generations often emphasized rapid excavation. Modern archaeologists increasingly recognize excavation as an irreversible act. Once something is uncovered, it can never be reburied in its original untouched condition. Waiting may preserve information that future generations, equipped with technologies not yet invented, will recover far more completely. Ironically, some of history's greatest discoveries may depend upon choosing not to dig. Standing before the silent ranks of the Terracotta Army today, it is easy to become captivated by the soldiers already visible. Yet, beyond the illuminated excavation halls, beyond the reconstructed formations and museum displays, the earth remains closed over countless unexplored spaces. Somewhere beneath those fields may lie additional military units awaiting discovery. Hidden workshops, forgotten ceremonial chambers, archives reduced to fragile traces, perhaps even entirely unexpected structures that no historical record has ever described. The first emperor's underground empire has already transformed archaeology once. But if new hidden sections continue emerging after half a century of careful investigation, one cannot help but wonder whether the greatest discoveries are still resting quietly beneath the soil, waiting for a future generation to ask the right questions before the earth finally chooses to reveal another piece of its extraordinary secret. If a single Bronze Age sword can survive for more than 3,000 years beneath quiet soil, preserving the skill of hands long vanished from memory, our next destination reveals an even broader mystery. Here, it is not one object waiting beneath the earth, but an entire hidden landscape. A place where every new survey redraws the map, and where one of humanity's most familiar monuments may represent only the visible fragment of a much greater story. Dawn arrives slowly across the Salisbury Plain. A silver mist drifts over rolling grasslands, softening every contour until the horizon seems suspended between earth and sky. In the distance, enormous standing stones emerge through the haze like silhouettes from another age. Their rough surfaces catch the first rays of sunlight, casting long shadows across ground that has witnessed thousands of years of changing seasons. The air is remarkably still. Even before a single word is spoken, Stonehenge possesses an unmistakable atmosphere of quiet permanence. For centuries, these massive stones have inspired wonder. Kings admired them. Poets imagined them. Artists painted them. Scientists measured them. Legends transformed them into the work of giants, magicians, or forgotten civilizations. Yet, despite centuries of fascination, perhaps the greatest surprise is that Stonehenge itself is no longer considered the entire mystery. Instead, it has become the centerpiece of a landscape whose true scale has only recently begun to emerge. From ground level, the surrounding countryside appears deceptively simple. Gentle slopes rise toward distant ridges. Sheep graze across open fields. Ancient footpaths cross the plain, following routes established long before modern roads appeared. To an untrained eye, there seems little reason to suspect that beneath the grass lies one of the most complex prehistoric ceremonial landscapes ever identified. The earth gives almost nothing away. Unlike ruined cities whose walls remain visible, most of the surrounding monuments disappeared thousands of years ago. Timber decayed, earthworks eroded, ditches gradually filled with soil. Human activity softened ancient boundaries until they blended almost perfectly with the natural terrain. Yet, the landscape never truly forgot. During the 20th century, archaeologists gradually recognized that Stonehenge did not stand alone. Burial mounds scattered across nearby hills hinted at broader patterns. Earthworks suggested forgotten enclosures. Excavations revealed traces of ancient pathways leading toward the monument from the river Avon. Each discovery expanded the story a little further. Then, technology transformed everything. Instead of relying solely on excavation, researchers began exploring the landscape using non-invasive methods capable of revealing what remained hidden beneath the surface. Ground-penetrating radar sent signals into the earth. Magnetometers detected subtle variations caused by buried ditches, pits, and structures. Electrical resistivity surveys measured differences in underground moisture retention. Airborne laser scanning mapped tiny changes in elevation invisible from the ground. Satellite imagery added yet another perspective. One by one, invisible monuments began appearing. Circular enclosures emerged beneath cultivated fields. Long-forgotten pits formed unexpected geometric patterns. Ancient avenues extended farther than previously imagined. Timber structures left ghostly outlines beneath the soil. Burial sites appeared where no visible traces remained. The famous stone circle suddenly occupied the center of an archaeological landscape vastly larger than anyone had anticipated. Among the most remarkable discoveries were those surrounding Durrington Walls, located only a few kilometers northeast of Stonehenge. Although archaeologists had known of this enormous earthwork for generations, recent surveys revealed something entirely unexpected. Encircling the monument lay a ring of enormous shafts, some more than 10 meters in diameter and several meters deep. Arranged with extraordinary precision, these pits formed a massive circle nearly 2 kilometers across. Their purpose remains uncertain. The prevailing interpretation suggests they marked a ceremonial boundary enclosing a sacred landscape. Rather than defensive features, they may have guided movement, defined ritual space, or symbolized a threshold between ordinary life and places of special significance. Yet, certainty remains elusive. Why construct such enormous pits? Why arrange them with such remarkable consistency? What ceremonies unfolded within their boundaries? The answers remain hidden beneath layers of time. Equally fascinating is the relationship between Stonehenge and nearby Woodhenge. Unlike its famous neighbor, Woodhenge originally consisted of enormous timber posts arranged in concentric circles. Today, only concrete markers indicate where those wooden pillars once stood. Yet, archaeological evidence suggests the monument played an important role within the wider ceremonial landscape. Some researchers propose that timber represented the world of the living, while enduring stone symbolized the realm of ancestors. According to this interpretation, processional routes connecting Woodhenge, the river Avon, and Stonehenge reflected symbolic journeys between life, death, memory, and renewal. it is an elegant idea. Whether it fully explains the landscape remains uncertain. Stonehenge itself also reveals increasing complexity with every generation of research. Construction did not occur all at once. Instead, the monument evolved through multiple phases extending over many centuries. Around 3000 BC, builders created a circular earthwork surrounded by a ditch. Centuries later, enormous sarsen stones were erected with astonishing precision. Still later, smaller bluestones transported from the Preseli Hills of western Wales were rearranged repeatedly into different configurations. The monument changed. Its builders adapted. Its meaning may have evolved alongside the societies that maintained it. Transporting the bluestones remains one of archaeology's most enduring questions. Many weigh several tons. Their geological origin has been traced convincingly to western Wales, more than 200 kilometers away. Experimental archaeology demonstrates that human transport using sledges, rollers, ropes, waterways, and coordinated labor was possible, though enormously demanding. Exactly how the journey unfolded remains debated. Some researchers emphasize overland transport. Others favor combined land and river routes. Earlier, theories suggesting natural glacial movement have largely lost support, though discussions continue regarding how prehistoric communities accomplished such an extraordinary engineering achievement. Regardless of method, the undertaking required remarkable organization. Hundreds of individuals may have participated. Planning likely extended across generations. The monument reflects not only technical skill, but also shared purpose. Perhaps equally remarkable is the evidence for seasonal gathering. Excavations at Durrington Walls uncovered extensive remains of houses, animal bones, pottery, and feasting debris. Scientific analysis suggests large numbers of people assembled periodically, bringing livestock from considerable distances. These gatherings may have coincided with important moments in the agricultural calendar, strengthening social bonds while participating in ceremonies linked to Stonehenge. Rather than existing as an isolated sanctuary visited by a privileged few, the landscape may have welcomed entire communities during significant seasonal events. Yet, every discovery introduces fresh uncertainty. How many people attended? How often did they gather? What beliefs united communities spread across such large distances? Without written records, archaeology must answer through fragments rather than complete narratives. The surrounding burial mounds deepen the mystery further. Hundreds of barrows occupy nearby ridges, containing individuals buried across many generations. Grave goods vary dramatically. Some contain finely crafted weapons, ornaments, or ceremonial objects. Others are comparatively modest. Together, they reveal continuity. Generation after generation returned to this landscape. The dead remained connected to the monuments. Memory itself became part of the terrain. Recent discoveries continue expanding the known boundaries of the ceremonial complex. Remote sensing has identified previously unknown pits, enclosures, post alignments, and subtle earthworks extending beyond areas traditionally associated with Stonehenge. Some features await excavation. Others may remain permanently preserved beneath cultivated land to avoid unnecessary disturbance. This reflects a growing philosophy within archaeology. Excavation is irreversible. Every trench destroys part of the archaeological record even while revealing it. Increasingly sophisticated technology allows researchers to learn without digging, preserving fragile evidence for future generations, whose methods may surpass those available today. That decision itself adds another layer of mystery. Some of Stonehenge's hidden monuments may remain deliberately untouched for decades, not because they lack importance, because preserving them may ultimately reveal more. As often happens with extraordinary archaeological landscapes, Speculative interpretations naturally emerge alongside established evidence. Perhaps the most profound transformation has occurred within our own perception. Stonehenge is no longer understood merely as a ring of stones standing in splendid isolation. Instead, it resembles the visible summit of a much larger archaeological landscape, extending beyond immediate sight. The monument functions almost like the highest peak of a mountain range, whose lower slopes remain concealed beneath grass and soil. Every newly discovered feature changes how existing discoveries are interpreted. Every additional survey redraws the map. Every technological advance reveals details once considered permanently invisible. Standing among the towering stones today, surrounded by open countryside stretching toward every horizon, it becomes strangely difficult to separate visible history from hidden memory. The famous trilithons command immediate attention, yet the imagination naturally wanders outward across the surrounding plain. Beneath those quiet fields lie buried avenues walked by forgotten processions, timber circles reduced to stains within the earth, ceremonial pits larger than houses, ancient dwellings where families gathered before seasonal festivals, and monuments whose full purpose may never be completely understood. Stonehenge has fascinated humanity for centuries because it appears to ask questions without offering simple answers. Yet, perhaps the greatest mystery no longer resides within the standing stones themselves. It lies beneath the silent landscape surrounding them, where each new discovery reveals that prehistoric Britain was capable of extraordinary planning, remarkable engineering, and complex ceremonial traditions whose deepest meanings have faded with time. The stones continue standing exactly where generations left them thousands of years ago, watching changing skies above an ever-expanding archaeological map. And if decades of scientific investigation continue uncovering previously unknown monuments around one of the world's most intensively studied prehistoric sites, it is difficult not to wonder how many more chapters remain hidden beneath the Salisbury Plain, waiting patiently beneath grass, mist, and quiet earth for the next discovery to reshape everything we thought we understood. If the hidden landscape surrounding Stonehenge reminds us that entire ceremonial worlds can remain concealed beneath familiar ground, our next discovery offers a quieter kind of revelation. There are no towering monoliths here, no monumental earthworks stretching across the horizon. Instead, history survives in thousands of tiny pieces of colored stone, arranged with such precision that, after nearly 2,000 years beneath the soil, they still tell a story that refuses to fade. Morning light settles gently across the countryside of Rutland in central England. Rolling fields ripple beneath the wind, bordered by ancient hedgerows and narrow country lanes that curve between farms, little changed in appearance for generations. Birds drift low over freshly plowed earth, while distant church towers rise above clusters of stone cottages. It is a landscape that feels timeless, peaceful, and entirely ordinary. Nothing on the surface suggests that beneath these fields rests one of the most remarkable Roman discoveries made in Britain during the 21st century. The earth appears silent, yet silence can be deceptive. For centuries, crops grew above buried walls. Rain seeped into forgotten rooms. Winter frosts passed over floors that once echoed with conversation, footsteps, laughter, and quiet evenings beside flickering oil lamps. The villa disappeared so completely that even local memory gradually surrendered it to the landscape. Its rediscovery began not with a major archaeological expedition, but with simple curiosity. In 2020, a young boy exploring farmland noticed unusual fragments scattered across the ground. They resembled pieces of broken pottery, unlike anything normally found in cultivated fields. His observations encouraged further investigation, and archaeologists soon realized they were standing above something extraordinary. Careful excavation slowly peeled back the centuries. The first outlines of stone walls emerged, then carefully constructed rooms, then fragments of painted plaster. Finally, beneath protective layers of soil, an intricate mosaic began appearing one section at a time. Thousands upon thousands of tiny tesserae, small cubes of stone, tile, and glass, formed elaborate geometric borders surrounding one of the most sophisticated mythological scenes ever discovered in Roman Britain. It was immediately clear that this was no ordinary villa. At the center of the mosaic unfolded episodes from the legendary conflict between Achilles and Hector during the Trojan War, drawn from Homer's Iliad. The artistry was remarkable. Figures moved with confidence across carefully balanced compositions. Armor, weapons, horses, and architectural details displayed exceptional craftsmanship. Every section reflected an artist deeply familiar with classical traditions that originated hundreds of kilometers away in the Mediterranean world. Such imagery is exceptionally rare in Roman Britain. Its presence raises fascinating questions. Who commissioned such an ambitious work? Who selected this particular story? Who possessed the education necessary to appreciate its literary significance? The answers remain uncertain. The owner of the villa was almost certainly a person of considerable wealth and influence. Importing skilled craftsmen or commissioning such elaborate decoration required substantial resources. Yet, wealth alone does not fully explain the mosaic. It also reflects cultural identity. By choosing scenes from Greek epic literature, the villa's inhabitants aligned themselves with the intellectual traditions admired throughout the Roman Empire. Homer's heroes represented courage, honor, fate, sacrifice, and the fragile relationship between glory and mortality. The mosaic transformed these timeless themes into part of everyday domestic life. Guests walking across the floor would immediately recognize the narrative. Conversations likely followed. Stories were remembered, ideas were exchanged. The artwork functioned as decoration, education, and social statement simultaneously. The villa itself gradually revealed further surprises. Excavations uncovered substantial stone buildings surrounding central courtyards, indicating a prosperous rural estate rather than a modest farmhouse. Additional rooms suggested residential quarters, storage areas, service spaces, and agricultural facilities supporting daily operations. Like many Roman villas, the complex combined elegant living with productive farming, creating both wealth and comfort for its inhabitants. Yet, only part of the site has been excavated. Geophysical surveys conducted beyond the exposed structures indicate additional buried walls, buildings, and features extending beneath neighboring fields. Magnetometry and ground surveys suggest that the visible villa may represent only one section of a considerably larger estate. How extensive was it? Did gardens once surround the residence? Were there bathhouses now hidden beneath cultivated land? Could workshops, shrines, or guest quarters still lie undiscovered nearby? Every unanswered question broadens the mystery. Scientific investigation continues revealing remarkable details. Microscopic analysis of mortar identifies construction techniques. Stone sourcing helps determine where building materials originated. Plant remains recovered from soil samples reconstruct ancient landscapes. Animal bones reveal dietary habits. Fragments of pottery identify trade connections extending across Roman Britain and beyond. Even pollen, trapped within buried sediments, contributes to understanding the environment surrounding the villa nearly 2 millennia ago. The mosaic itself demands extraordinary conservation. Although buried soil protected it for centuries, exposure introduces new challenges. Moisture, temperature fluctuations, biological growth, and changing environmental conditions all threaten delicate surfaces once safely sealed underground. Conservators work patiently to stabilize every section, ensuring that preservation remains as important as discovery. The artwork has become more than an archaeological treasure. It has become a responsibility. One particularly intriguing aspect involves the choice of Achilles and Hector. Among countless myths available to Roman patrons, why select this confrontation? The duel represents more than military conflict. It explores mortality, honor, revenge, compassion, the inevitability of fate. Roman audiences understood these themes deeply. The story reflected ideals of leadership while acknowledging the tragic costs of ambition and war. Perhaps the villa owner admired these lessons. Perhaps the imagery celebrated military ancestry. Perhaps the selection reflected purely artistic preference. No inscription survives to explain the decision. Instead, the mosaic invites interpretation without offering certainty. This uncertainty characterizes much of Roman Britain itself. Although incorporated into the Roman Empire for nearly 4 centuries, Britain remained culturally diverse. Indigenous traditions blended with imported Roman customs. Local identities adapted without disappearing completely. Villas varied enormously in size, wealth, decoration, and architecture, reflecting regional differences alongside imperial influence. The Rutland Villa captures that fascinating intersection. It feels unmistakably Roman, yet it also belongs entirely to Britain. The surrounding countryside offers additional clues. Roman roads connected estates to nearby towns, military installations, and commercial centers. Agricultural products flowed through carefully organized networks supplying urban populations. Grain, livestock, wool, pottery, metalwork, and luxury goods traveled remarkable distances. The villa was not isolated. It participated in a sophisticated economic system stretching across much of Europe. Every meal served within its dining rooms reflected those connections. Every imported vessel testified to trade. Every decorative choice reflected communication between distant regions of the empire. The eventual abandonment of the estate remains another mystery. Like many villas in Roman Britain, it gradually declined during the 4th and 5th centuries as imperial administration weakened. Political instability, changing economies, shifting populations, and reduced long-distance trade transformed rural life. Rooms once carefully maintained fell silent. Roofs collapsed. Walls crumbled. Wind carried leaves across abandoned courtyards. Generation after generation passed until only buried foundations remained. Ironically, neglect became preservation. As buildings decayed naturally, collapsed masonry protected delicate floors from later disturbance. Soil accumulated gradually. Agricultural activity continued above without exposing what remained below. The villa vanished almost completely. Yet it was never truly lost. It simply waited. Modern archaeological methods continue extracting remarkable information without disturbing every part of the site. Ground-penetrating radar identifies buried architecture. Drone photography reveals subtle crop marks invisible at ground level. Geochemical surveys detect traces of human activity. 3-dimensional digital modeling reconstructs rooms from surviving foundations. Technology increasingly allows researchers to study hidden landscapes while minimizing excavation itself. Sometimes, preserving the unknown becomes more valuable than immediately uncovering it. Naturally, discoveries of this significance encourage broader speculation. Some researchers wonder whether other elite villas remain concealed beneath Britain's farmland, their mosaics untouched since antiquity. Others suggest that many luxurious residences disappeared so completely beneath later agricultural landscapes that only modern remote sensing will reveal them. A few propose an even broader possibility. Could Roman Britain's wealth and sophistication have been greater than traditionally imagined? Recent discoveries certainly encourage renewed examination. Each newly uncovered villa adds complexity to a historical picture once considered relatively complete. Yet, archaeology advances through careful evidence rather than dramatic conclusions. Extraordinary preservation does not necessarily overturn established history. Instead, it enriches it. The Rutland Mosaic illustrates precisely this process. Rather than rewriting everything known about Roman Britain, it expands understanding of elite culture, artistic patronage, education, and rural life. Its significance lies not in contradiction, but in refinement. Still, mystery remains inseparable from discovery. Who walked these corridors each morning? Who welcomed guests into rooms adorned with scenes from Homer? Who watched artisans carefully position thousands of colored tesserae one by one until the composition finally emerged? Who crossed the finished floor for the last time before the villa fell silent? No written record answers these questions. Only the stones remain. Perhaps that is what gives mosaics their unique emotional power. Unlike statues viewed from a distance, mosaics formed part of everyday life. People lived upon them. Children played across them. Visitors admired them. Servants cleaned them. Sunlight crossed them every afternoon. They belonged to living homes rather than isolated monuments. Standing before the restored floor today, it becomes difficult to think only about artistic technique. The tiny tesserae seem almost alive, preserving not merely an image, but the atmosphere of an entire household. Every carefully placed stone represents patience, intention, and remarkable human skill. Together, they bridge nearly 2,000 years with astonishing clarity. And yet, despite everything the excavation has revealed, much remains concealed beneath neighboring fields. Buried walls continue extending beyond explored trenches. Hidden rooms still wait beneath layers of soil. Scientific instruments hint at structures whose full stories remain unknown. If one observant child could unknowingly begin the rediscovery of one of Britain's finest Roman mosaics, perhaps countless other masterpieces still lie quietly beneath ordinary landscapes, invisible to everyone passing above them. Somewhere beneath another peaceful field, another forgotten villa may still be waiting, its floors untouched, its stories unspoken, and its silent beauty preserved by time until history is ready to uncover another remarkable chapter of the ancient world. If a forgotten Roman villa can quietly preserve the elegance of everyday life beneath an ordinary field, our next destination reminds us that not every remarkable discovery is measured by wealth or artistry. Sometimes, the greatest revelations emerge from places built not for comfort, but for belief. Hidden beneath the soil of Western Norway, the faint outlines of wooden posts have reopened one of archaeology's oldest questions. How did the Vikings worship before churches transformed the northern landscape? And how much of their sacred world still lies beyond our understanding? Morning mist drifts across the valleys of western Norway, softening the outlines of distant mountains as narrow rivers wind toward quiet fjords. Forests of pine and birch climb the surrounding hillsides, while scattered farms occupy patches of fertile land that have supported human communities for centuries. The landscape feels ancient without appearing dramatic. There are no towering temples rising above the trees, no broken marble columns, and no massive stone sanctuaries dominating the horizon. At first glance, there's little reason to suspect that this peaceful countryside once held a place of extraordinary spiritual importance. Yet, beneath the grass, the earth preserved a memory that timber alone could never have carried across 1,000 years. Unlike the stone monuments of Egypt, Greece, or Rome, Viking sacred buildings were constructed almost entirely from wood. Their walls weathered, their roofs collapsed, and their supporting beams slowly returned to the soil. Generation after generation passed across the same land, leaving almost no visible trace that such places had ever existed. By the time medieval writers began recording stories about the Old Norse gods, many of the buildings associated with those beliefs had already disappeared. This absence created a mystery that endured for centuries. Historians knew from medieval texts that Viking communities gathered for seasonal feasts honoring gods such as Odin, Thor, and Freyr. These accounts described sacrifices, communal celebrations, ritual drinking, and sacred ceremonies that strengthened both religious belief and political alliances. Yet, scholars long debated where such ceremonies actually took place. Did Vikings worship primarily outdoors, beneath ancient trees or beside sacred springs? Were ceremonies held inside the homes of powerful chieftains? Or did purpose-built temples exist, standing as dedicated centers of religious life? The discovery at Osse offered one of the clearest pieces of evidence yet uncovered. In 2020, archaeologists conducting excavations ahead of residential construction near the village of Osse in Ørsta municipality began identifying unusually large post holes, unlike those found in ordinary domestic buildings. As excavation continued, a remarkable floor plan slowly emerged from subtle changes in soil color. The building measured approximately 14 meters long and 8 meters wide. Its supporting posts were massive. Its walls outlined a tall rectangular structure. Most striking of all, the arrangement suggested a raised central tower extending above the main roofline. This architectural form differed dramatically from ordinary Viking longhouses. Researchers quickly recognized similarities with structures previously identified at only a handful of Scandinavian archaeological sites. The evidence pointed toward something exceptional. The prevailing interpretation identifies the building as a hof, a Norse cult house or temple dedicated primarily to religious ceremonies. Unlike domestic halls designed for everyday living, this structure appears intentionally monumental. Its elevated central section would have made it highly visible throughout the surrounding valley, announcing its significance to anyone approaching the settlement. Architecture itself became a declaration of sacred space. Although no wooden walls survive, the post holes reveal astonishing precision. Every supporting beam occupied a carefully planned position. The dimensions followed consistent proportions. The entrance appears deliberately aligned. Even after a millennium beneath the earth, the building's geometry remains readable. It is almost as though the structure left behind a shadow of itself. Nearby, excavations uncovered additional clues. Cooking pits containing fire-cracked stones suggested large communal feasts. Animal bones indicated ritual consumption of livestock. Fragments of pottery reflected repeated gatherings. Settlement remains surrounded the temple, demonstrating that it stood within an active farming community rather than an isolated wilderness. Together, these discoveries support historical descriptions of seasonal festivals during which religious ceremonies merged with social celebration. The Norse calendar revolved around important moments in the agricultural year. Winter approached. Spring returned. Harvest arrived. Communities gathered not merely to survive changing seasons, but to reinforce relationships with one another and with divine powers believed to shape the natural world. Offerings accompanied shared meals. Stories preserved memory. Ceremony strengthened identity. The temple may have stood at the center of all these activities. Yet, many questions remain unanswered. Exactly which gods were honored there? How often were ceremonies held? Who led the rituals? Unlike later religious traditions, Viking belief was never governed by a single sacred text. Practices varied across regions. oral traditions evolved over generations. Local customs adapted to changing political and cultural conditions. The temple therefore represents only one chapter within a remarkably diverse spiritual landscape. Its architecture also reflects broader historical transformation. By the late Iron Age and early Viking Age, Scandinavian elites maintained increasing contact with continental Europe through trade, diplomacy, and travel. Monumental churches and public buildings demonstrated how architecture could express authority. Some archaeologists suggest local leaders responded by constructing increasingly elaborate ceremonial buildings of their own. If correct, the temple at Os represents more than religious devotion. It symbolizes social competition, political legitimacy, public identity, power made visible through sacred architecture. This interpretation remains carefully considered rather than universally accepted. Religious and political authority were deeply intertwined throughout many ancient societies. Separating them completely may impose modern distinctions that did not exist at the time. The temple could easily have served multiple purposes simultaneously. It may have hosted rituals, negotiations, seasonal assemblies, feasts, legal agreements, commemorations. Its significance likely extended beyond any single function. The surrounding landscape strengthens this possibility. Longhouses, agricultural features, and settlement remains indicate a prosperous community capable of supporting ambitious construction projects. Timber of sufficient size required careful selection and considerable labor. Skilled builders shaped massive beams, using sophisticated woodworking techniques perfected over generations. Every joint reflected craftsmanship. Every post represented planning. Every wall embodied cooperation. The building itself became evidence of an organized society whose complexity often exceeds popular stereotypes surrounding the Viking Age. For generations, Vikings were portrayed primarily as raiders and warriors. Modern archaeology paints a far richer picture. They were farmers, shipbuilders, traders, poets, craftsmen, navigators, lawmakers, religious practitioners. Communities balanced practical survival with sophisticated cultural traditions extending across Scandinavia and beyond. The temple at Osse contributes significantly to that broader understanding. Scientific analysis continues expanding knowledge of the site. Radiocarbon dating refines construction chronology. Pollen analysis reconstructs surrounding vegetation. Microscopic soil examination identifies activity areas. Animal bone studies reveal butchering practices. Every new technique extracts additional information from evidence almost invisible to earlier generations of researchers. Yet, archaeology remains remarkably cautious. The temptation to imagine dramatic ceremonies unfolding within the temple is understandable. Firelight illuminating carved wooden pillars. Priests invoking Odin. Warriors offering weapons before battle. Seasonal festivals lasting deep into winter nights. Such images possess undeniable appeal. Some elements align with historical descriptions. Others remain imaginative reconstructions. The physical evidence supports ceremonial activity. Its precise details remain beyond recovery. That distinction matters. Beyond established interpretations, more speculative possibilities naturally emerge. Some researchers wonder whether dozens of similar temples once stood throughout Scandinavia before Christianity transformed the region. Because wood rarely survives, most could have vanished almost completely, leaving only subtle archaeological signatures awaiting discovery beneath farms and forests. Others suggest the Os temple reflects architectural traditions inherited from even earlier periods whose origins remain poorly understood. A few propose that future remote sensing technologies may identify hidden cult houses across northern Europe without extensive excavation. None of these ideas has been conclusively demonstrated. yet neither can they be dismissed outright. Archaeology repeatedly reminds us that absence of evidence is not always evidence of absence. The transition from Norse religion to Christianity introduces another layer of mystery. During the 10th and 11th centuries, Scandinavian kingdoms gradually adopted the new faith. Churches appeared where temples once stood. Older rituals faded or adapted. Some sacred places were abandoned peacefully. Others may have been deliberately dismantled. Timber from earlier buildings could have been reused in homes, barns, or churches. If so, fragments of ancient temples may still exist today, hidden within later structures whose builders never recorded their origins. The written sources themselves complicate interpretation. Most surviving accounts describing Viking religion were recorded centuries after conversion, often by Christian authors observing traditions no longer fully practiced. Their descriptions remain invaluable, yet they must be compared carefully with archaeology rather than accepted without question. The temple at Os provides something rare: physical evidence, silent, incomplete, yet undeniably real. It allows archaeology to stand beside literature rather than beneath it. Perhaps the greatest significance of the discovery lies not in confirming every historical account, but in demonstrating that purpose-built sacred architecture truly formed part of at least some Viking communities. The old debate has shifted. The question is no longer whether such buildings existed. Instead, researchers ask how many there were, how varied they became, how their architecture evolved, how they reflected changing beliefs across different regions. Every new excavation broadens those possibilities. Standing within the excavated outline today, visitors see little more than carefully marked post holes cutting through quiet Norwegian soil. The walls have vanished. The roof disappeared centuries ago. Wind moves gently across open grass, where ceremonies once unfolded beyond living memory. Yet imagination requires very little encouragement. Smoke rising toward heavy timber beams, voices gathering during midwinter festivals, the scent of pine resin burning in ceremonial fires, offerings placed with solemn intention, stories spoken beneath carved wooden pillars while snow settled beyond the entrance. None of these scenes can be proven exactly as imagined. Neither can they be entirely dismissed. The earth preserved enough to remind us that belief once occupied this space with extraordinary intensity. Perhaps that is what makes the Viking Temple at Os so compelling. It survives not through towering ruins or spectacular treasures, but through absence itself. A pattern of post holes became the outline of a forgotten sanctuary. A handful of soil stains reopened conversations about faith, leadership, community, and memory that had remained unresolved for centuries. The discovery also carries a quieter lesson. Human history is not preserved only in stone. Entire worlds can be built from wood, celebrated for generations, and disappear almost completely, leaving only faint impressions beneath the earth. Yet, even those faint traces possess remarkable power. They remind us that landscapes we believe we know may still conceal invisible monuments waiting patiently beneath forests, fields, and valleys. And if one sacred building could remain hidden for 1,000 years before quietly emerging from Norwegian soil, perhaps countless other temples, halls, and forgotten places of worship are still resting beneath the northern landscape, carrying stories that have not yet found their way back into the light. If the Viking Temple at Os reminds us that even a few post holes can preserve the memory of an entire belief system, our next discovery reveals something equally remarkable from a very different civilization. This time, history is not preserved in sacred architecture or ceremonial monuments, but in the ordinary routines of everyday life. Hidden beneath volcanic ash, a simple neighborhood food shop has become one of the most intimate windows ever opened into the ancient Roman world. Morning sunlight falls gently across the weathered streets of Pompeii. Stone-paved roads stretch between silent buildings whose walls still carry faded traces of brilliant color. Doorways stand open exactly where they welcomed customers nearly 2,000 years ago. Wheel ruts worn into the streets reveal centuries of passing carts, while stepping stones still bridge the gaps where rainwater once flowed. The city feels strangely suspended between presence and absence, as though its inhabitants had stepped away only moments before. Silence dominates the streets now. Yet, beneath that silence survives an extraordinary sense of familiarity. Among the villas, workshops, bathhouses, temples, and marketplaces lies a modest corner establishment that would have attracted little attention during its own time. It was not the residence of a wealthy senator. It contained no imperial treasures. It held no famous works of sculpture. Instead, it served food. For centuries, this neighborhood thermopolium, something remarkably similar to a modern snack bar or takeaway counter, remained sealed beneath the hardened layers of ash deposited during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79. When archaeologists carefully uncovered the structure, they encountered one of the best preserved examples of its kind ever discovered. The counter itself immediately captures attention. Smooth masonry curves toward the street, punctuated by large circular openings designed to hold deep ceramic jars known as dolia. These containers once stored hot meals, wine, grains, vegetables, legumes, and prepared dishes for customers seeking convenient food while moving through the busy city. The arrangement feels surprisingly modern. Customers would have approached the counter, selected their meal, spoken with the vendor, and continued with their day. Even after nearly 2 millennia, the atmosphere remains astonishingly recognizable. The painted decorations covering the counter are equally remarkable. Bright images of ducks, roosters, dogs, marine creatures, and other animals decorate its exterior. Some may have advertised food available for purchase. Others may have reflected local artistic traditions or symbolic meanings now only partially understood. Their vivid colors survived because volcanic material rapidly buried the building, shielding delicate pigments from weather, sunlight, and human disturbance for centuries. The paintings are not merely decorative. They preserve fragments of daily communication between merchant and customer. They reveal how businesses attracted attention. They remind us that commercial life in ancient cities depended upon visual presentation just as much as it does today. Inside the jars themselves, researchers recovered traces of ancient food. Scientific analysis identified remains of duck, pork, goat, fish, snails, and beef, along with plant materials that once contributed flavor or nutrition. Some containers appear to have held mixed dishes combining several ingredients, reflecting the diversity of Roman cooking. Wine residues were also identified, including evidence suggesting that crushed beans may sometimes have been added to alter taste or color, a practice mentioned by certain ancient Roman writers. These discoveries transformed the thermopolium into something far greater than a preserved building. It became a frozen kitchen, a preserved menu, a surviving moment from an ordinary afternoon interrupted forever. Pompeii has always occupied a unique place in archaeology because of the extraordinary circumstances surrounding its destruction. When Mount Vesuvius erupted, waves of volcanic ash, pumice, and superheated material overwhelmed the city with devastating speed. Although the disaster claimed thousands of lives, the same deposits that destroyed Pompeii also protected countless buildings, objects, inscriptions, and even organic materials that would normally disappear over time. Wood survived, bread survived, furniture survived, paintings survived, food survived. Entire rooms remained almost exactly as they had appeared on the day everything changed. Few archaeological sites anywhere in the world preserve everyday life with such remarkable completeness. The snack bar illustrates another important aspect of Roman society, often overshadowed by grand monuments and imperial politics. Many city residents did not prepare elaborate meals at home. Apartment dwellers frequently lived in small spaces with limited cooking facilities. Public food establishments therefore played an essential role within an urban life. Thermopolia served workers, travelers, artisans, laborers, merchants, and anyone seeking a convenient meal while moving through crowded streets. Far from being unusual, they were common features throughout Roman cities. Archaeologists have identified dozens within Pompeii alone. Yet, the recently excavated example stands apart because of its exceptional preservation. Every object contributes another layer of understanding. Amphorae remain positioned where they were last placed. Storage vessels preserve traces of their contents. Cooking equipment reveals practical organization. Animal bones provide insight into dietary habits. Even the arrangement of serving containers suggests routines repeated countless times before the eruption abruptly ended them. The building speaks quietly through ordinary details rather than dramatic spectacle. Equally intriguing are the human traces surrounding the establishment. Graffiti scratched into nearby walls preserve casual conversations, jokes, political opinions, advertisements, personal names, and messages exchanged by ordinary citizens. Together with the Thermopolium, these inscriptions reveal a city filled with recognizable human voices rather than distant historical abstractions. Someone ordered lunch. Someone complained. Someone promoted a political candidate. Someone left a joke for friends. Someone hurried home carrying freshly purchased food. The distance between the ancient world and our own begins to feel surprisingly small. Researchers continue studying residues recovered from cooking vessels using increasingly sophisticated scientific techniques. Stable isotope analysis, residue chemistry, microscopic plant remains, pollen, starch grains, and ancient proteins each contribute pieces to a growing picture of Roman cuisine. Every improvement in laboratory technology allows archaeologists to recover information unimaginable only a generation ago. The snack bar therefore continues to reveal new discoveries long after excavation itself has ended. Yet, the site also raises important questions. How accurately does this single establishment represent daily life across Pompeii? Did different neighborhoods specialize in different foods? Were certain dishes associated with wealth while others served primarily working-class customers? How did seasonal ingredients influence menus throughout the year? Archaeologists continue comparing evidence from multiple thermopolia to better understand patterns of commerce, diet, and social interaction throughout the city. The building also illustrates the remarkable complexity of Roman urban economies. Food did not simply appear on the counter. Farmers produced crops. Fishermen supplied seafood. Merchants transported goods. Potters manufactured storage vessels. Metal workers created cooking equipment. Wine producers filled amphorae. Every prepared meal represented an interconnected economic network extending far beyond the city itself. Even a modest lunch reflected the remarkable organization of Roman society. The preservation of organic material continues to astonish researchers. Normally, cooked food disappears quickly through decay. Wooden shelves collapse, textiles rot, plant fibers vanish. Yet Pompeii repeatedly defies those expectations. Carbonization, burial conditions, and rapid sealing combine to preserve materials that rarely survive elsewhere. Each newly excavated room, therefore, possesses extraordinary scientific value precisely because it captures ordinary existence. The greatest luxury preserved at Pompeii may not be gold. It may be routine. The Thermopolium also offers subtle clues about social interaction. Customers likely gathered around the counter throughout the day, exchanging news, discussing politics, negotiating business, or simply resting during busy routines. The establishment functioned not merely as a place to eat, but as a neighborhood meeting point where information traveled alongside meals. Such places exist in every society. The architecture changes, the language changes, the recipes change. Yet, people continue gathering around food. That quiet continuity across 2,000 years may be one of Pompeii's most moving lessons. As often happens with remarkable discoveries, more speculative ideas have emerged alongside established archaeological interpretations. Some researchers wonder whether additional sealed food establishments remain hidden within unexcavated districts of Pompeii, preserving equally detailed evidence of regional cuisine. Others suggest that future chemical analysis may recover traces of ingredients currently impossible to identify, revealing recipes lost for centuries. Some hope microscopic residue studies may eventually reconstruct complete preparation methods, allowing historians to understand Roman cooking with unprecedented accuracy. A few have imagined something even more intriguing. What if unopened storage jars elsewhere within Pompeii still contain preserved residues capable of revealing entirely unknown foods or forgotten culinary traditions? Such possibilities remain speculative. No evidence currently supports dramatic claims of revolutionary discoveries waiting inside every buried building. Yet, archaeology has repeatedly demonstrated that Pompeii continues to surprise even specialists who have studied the city for decades. Entire neighborhoods remain under excavation. Previously inaccessible buildings continue to emerge. New conservation techniques reveal details once thought permanently lost. Every season brings discoveries that deepen rather than diminish the city's mystery. The eruption itself also remains the subject of continuing scientific investigation. Modern volcanology, forensic archaeology, and environmental analysis continue refining our understanding of how events unfolded during those catastrophic hours. Improved dating methods, ash analysis, and excavation records have challenged earlier assumptions while strengthening others. The city has become not only an archaeological site, but also a laboratory where multiple scientific disciplines converge. Perhaps that explains why Pompeii never feels completely finished. Every answer seems to generate another question. Every restored room suggests another doorway still sealed. Every excavated street disappears toward buildings yet to be explored. The city continues revealing itself gradually, almost reluctantly, as though aware that mystery forms part of its enduring power. Standing beside the ancient snack bar today, it becomes difficult to focus only on the counter or the beautifully painted animals decorating its surface. Instead, the imagination drifts toward the final ordinary morning before the eruption. A vendor arranging freshly prepared meals. Customers discussing familiar concerns. Children passing through nearby streets. Merchants beginning another routine day beneath a mountain that appeared peaceful, familiar, and permanent. None of them knew they were living inside a moment that would soon become frozen in time. Today, nearly 2,000 years later, archaeologists continue uncovering fragments of those interrupted lives with extraordinary care. Each bowl, each jar, each painted wall, and each grain of preserved food transforms catastrophe into understanding. The Thermopolium reminds us that history is not composed only of emperors, battles, or magnificent temples. It is equally preserved within shared meals, ordinary conversations, neighborhood businesses, and familiar routines that once seemed too commonplace to matter. And perhaps that is Pompeii's deepest mystery. Beneath layers of volcanic ash, countless lives remain suspended between disappearance and rediscovery. Every newly excavated building reminds us that much of the ancient city still waits beneath the ground. untouched since the 1st century. If one simple neighborhood snack bar could preserve such an intimate portrait of everyday Roman life, what other forgotten stories are still resting beneath the silent streets, waiting patiently for the next careful brushstroke to awaken voices that have remained unheard for nearly 2,000 years? If the quiet streets of Pompeii remind us that ordinary moments can survive for thousands of years beneath layers of ash, our next discovery reveals that time can preserve something even more unexpected. Not a building, not a marketplace, not a forgotten meal. Instead, it preserved a single object so perfectly that, at first glance, it seems almost untouched by the passing of more than 3 millennia. Morning fog hangs low over the Bavarian countryside. Rolling fields stretch toward distant forests, their gentle slopes concealing countless generations of human history beneath layers of soil. Farmers have cultivated this landscape for centuries, rarely suspecting that ancient burials still rest below the surface. To the casual observer, nothing interrupts the quiet rhythm of the land. Yet, beneath one modest mound, protected by earth and time, lay an object that would astonish even experienced archaeologists. It was discovered in 2023 during excavations near the town of Nördlingen in southern Germany. Archaeologists investigating a Bronze Age burial uncovered a grave containing the remains of 3 individuals: a man, a woman, and a child. Their exact relationship remains uncertain. Were they members of the same family? Did they belong to an elite household? Or were they brought together through rituals whose meanings have long since faded from memory? The answers remain elusive. Resting beside them was a sword, not merely a surviving fragment or a heavily corroded relic, but a remarkably complete bronze weapon whose preservation immediately drew international attention. The blade retained an extraordinary sharpness of form. Decorative details remained clearly visible. Even the octagonal hilt, cast with exceptional craftsmanship, survived in a condition rarely encountered among artifacts of such great age. The sword dates to approximately the 14th century BC, placing it within the Middle Bronze Age, a period of expanding trade, technological innovation, and increasingly complex societies across Europe. Bronze had already transformed the ancient world. By combining copper with tin, metalworkers produced stronger, more durable tools and weapons than those made from stone or pure copper alone. Yet, bronze remained valuable. Every blade represented significant investment, requiring access to distant trade networks, skilled artisans, and carefully controlled resources. The sword itself reflects that remarkable expertise. Its blade was carefully cast before being refined through extensive hammering and polishing. Such treatment strengthened the metal while producing the elegant profile still visible today. The octagonal hilt belongs to a distinctive group of European Bronze Age weapons associated with highly skilled craftsmanship. Every curve reflects deliberate planning. Every decorative line suggests an artisan whose abilities had been perfected through years of experience. Although visually striking, the sword was almost certainly more than an ornament. Microscopic examination indicates that despite its elegant appearance, it was fully capable of functioning as a practical weapon. The balance, blade geometry, and construction all suggest genuine use rather than purely ceremonial display. Whether it ever entered battle, however, remains unknown. That uncertainty opens the first of many intriguing questions. Who carried this weapon? Was its owner a respected warrior whose reputation extended beyond local communities? A political leader whose authority depended partly upon martial prestige? Or perhaps an individual whose role combined military, ceremonial, and social responsibilities in ways that no longer fit modern categories? Unlike later civilizations, Bronze Age Europe left no written records describing the lives of those buried with such objects. Archaeologists must instead reconstruct their stories through careful study of artifacts, burial practices, settlement patterns, metallurgy, and environmental evidence. Every discovery becomes part of a much larger puzzle assembled without written testimony. The grave itself offers valuable clues. The careful placement of the sword beside the deceased suggests deliberate symbolism. Across Bronze Age Europe, weapons often accompanied burials, reflecting identity, status, lineage, or beliefs concerning the afterlife. Yet practices varied enormously between regions and across centuries. Some communities buried valuable objects with their dead. Others deposited weapons in rivers, lakes, or wetlands as ritual offerings. Still others recycled bronze by melting older objects into new forms. Why, then, was this sword placed inside the grave instead of being reused? The mainstream explanation emphasizes social significance. The weapon may have represented personal identity so closely that separating it from its owner became unthinkable. Alternatively, burying valuable possessions may have expressed respect, commemorated achievement, or reinforced family status within the community. The exceptional condition of the blade also reflects remarkable preservation. Bronze usually develops corrosion after thousands of years underground. Soil chemistry, moisture levels, oxygen exposure, and microbial activity all influence how metal survives. In this case, local environmental conditions proved unusually favorable, allowing intricate details to remain visible long after comparable weapons elsewhere had deteriorated. Its survival provides researchers with a rare opportunity to study Bronze Age manufacturing techniques directly rather than reconstructing them from damaged fragments. Scientific analysis continues, revealing additional information. Metallurgical studies examine the alloy's composition to identify sources of copper and tin. Microscopic wear patterns reveal how the blade may have been handled. Casting marks preserve evidence of ancient production methods. Residues trapped within tiny surface imperfections may eventually reveal further clues concerning burial conditions or use. Every laboratory examination extracts another layer of information from an object silent for more than 3,000 years. Yet the sword is only one piece of a much larger story. Bronze Age Europe was far more interconnected than once believed. Tin required for bronze production often traveled hundreds or even thousands of kilometers before reaching metalworkers. Copper originated from distant mining regions. Amber, glass beads, gold, and exotic materials crossed continents through remarkably extensive exchange networks. Rather than isolated villages, many communities participated in sophisticated systems of trade linking diverse cultures across Europe. The craftsmanship displayed by the sword reflects those connections. Knowledge itself traveled alongside raw materials. Metalworking techniques spread through apprenticeship. Design traditions evolved across generations. Ideas crossed mountains and rivers long before written history documented such movement. The burial, therefore, represents not merely a local event, but part of an expansive cultural landscape whose complexity continues to surprise archaeologists. Researchers also remain intrigued by the three individuals buried together. Osteological analysis seeks to determine age, health, diet, ancestry, and possible family relationships. Ancient DNA studies may eventually clarify whether they were biologically related or connected through entirely different social bonds. Their shared burial suggests deliberate association, but exactly why they were interred together remains uncertain. Could they have died simultaneously? Were they members of the same household? Did later ritual practices bring earlier burials together? Current evidence allows several possibilities without definitively favoring one. The sword naturally attracts most public attention, yet the burial context may ultimately prove equally important. Objects gain meaning through relationships. A weapon inside a grave tells a different story than the same weapon recovered from a battlefield. Associated artifacts, skeletal positions, surrounding sediments, pollen, and microscopic environmental evidence each contribute to interpreting the discovery. Archaeology rarely depends upon spectacular objects alone. Instead, meaning emerges through careful comparison of countless small details. As with many extraordinary discoveries, more speculative interpretations have appeared alongside established research. Some observers suggest the sword belonged to a legendary regional ruler, remembered only through fading oral traditions. Others imagine it served ceremonial purposes during seasonal rituals before accompanying its owner into the grave. A few propose that similarly preserved Bronze Age burials remain hidden beneath Europe's agricultural landscapes, waiting to reshape our understanding of prehistoric political organization and warfare. These possibilities remain speculative. The available evidence neither confirms nor entirely excludes them. Archaeologists continue emphasizing careful analysis over dramatic conclusions, recognizing that extraordinary preservation does not necessarily imply extraordinary explanations. Yet, remarkable discoveries often encourage broader reflection. If one nearly pristine sword could remain hidden beneath an ordinary field until the 21st century, how many comparable artifacts still rest undisturbed beneath Europe's landscapes? Modern remote sensing, aerial photography, geophysical surveys, and improved excavation techniques continue identifying previously unknown burial mounds that appear almost invisible from the surface. Every year reveals additional prehistoric cemeteries. Every excavation uncovers new variations in burial practice. Every scientific advance allows fresh questions to be asked of familiar evidence. The Bronze Age itself becomes increasingly complex with each passing decade. Long-held assumptions concerning isolated communities have gradually given way to evidence of mobility, exchange, innovation, and cultural interaction on an impressive scale. Weapons evolved alongside social structures. Craftsmanship reflected identity. Trade transformed economies. Ceremonial traditions adapted through generations. The preserved sword embodies each of these larger historical currents within a single object, small enough to rest comfortably in human hands. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the discovery is not its beauty, but its silence. The blade cannot reveal the name of its owner. It cannot describe the conflicts it witnessed. It cannot explain whether it ever left its scabbard in battle or remained primarily a symbol of authority. It carries no inscription. No maker's signature survives. No written chronicle records the life connected to it. Instead, it offers something quieter, evidence without certainty, presence without explanation. Standing before the sword today, polished only by the careful work of conservators rather than modern restoration, it is difficult not to imagine the final person who held it. Perhaps morning sunlight once reflected from its bronze edge, much as museum lights do today. Perhaps it accompanied ceremonies, negotiations, journeys, or moments of profound personal significance. Perhaps it represented generations of inherited prestige before finally entering the grave, where it would remain untouched for more than 3,000 years. History rarely preserves complete stories. More often, it leaves fragments: a carved stone, a buried road, a forgotten temple, a painted mosaic, a neighborhood snack bar, or, in this case, a single blade resting beside those who carried its memory into silence. The exceptionally preserved Bronze Age sword reminds us that archaeology is not merely the study of ancient objects. It is the study of relationships between people, technology, belief, craftsmanship, and time itself. Every discovery expands the known world while revealing how much still lies beyond our understanding. Beneath quiet fields, forest floors, riverbanks, and forgotten burial mounds, countless artifacts continue their patient conversation with the earth. And if one weapon could survive almost unchanged across 34 centuries, perhaps somewhere beneath another ordinary landscape rests an equally extraordinary object, still untouched, still unknown, and still waiting for the moment when history quietly chooses to reveal another piece of its unfinished story.